Hey guys, and welcome to the beautiful madness of Total War Warhammer, where we're going to be taking a look at a double cast today, so not one, but two replays just for you guys. And up first, we're going to be taking the forces of the Wood Elves up against the Dwarfs, which is what both replays are going to be about, but our first opponent is going to be Mr. AJ Lover himself, and the reason we're doing a double cast today is I want to take a look, one, at this matchup as a whole, but more importantly, of a little sneaky tactic me and Samurai Warrior worked on absolute months and months ago when the Wood Elf DLC first came out, so 2 DLCs ago now. I tried bringing it back and seeing how it worked, and there's going to be 2 good examples of good play with it and slightly worse play, but still seeing how it goes. And as you can imagine, it is going to be involving the Bladesingers. Now I know at this moment you're probably thinking, Ducky, you are an insane madman. There is no way Bladesingers can work up against Dwarfs. Yes, they're armor piercing, yes, they're anti-infantry, but there's a big weakness to them against the mighty Dawi, and that is the fact they do magic attacks. We only have the 1 unit of Bladesingers here. You can see we have 100 in a unit. This is actually a custom game up against my opponent, so unfortunately I think he accidentally kept the unit sizes on extra large rather than just large. So we've got even more Dwarfs and even more Wood Elves to crunch through. But the reason you're going to be bringing the Bladesingers is because you can take a Branch Wraith again. Does magic attack, doesn't seem like the greatest pick in the universe. It does come with Scroll of Shielding as well as the Withering, but the combination here is the other Trickster's Shard, lowering magic resistance of all nearby enemies by 20%. That's going to take Dwarfs down to just 5% magic resistance, meaning that the Bladesingers, who are anti-infantry, armor piercing, are going to rip, tear, and slaughter any Dawi unit that they touch, and we have them today here on the right-hand side. We also have some War Dancers mixed in with Eternal Guard, so Eternal Guard all the way along the line, and more War Dancers over on the left-hand side. Leading our forces, we do have the mighty, glorious Ancient Tree Man that can stalwart as usual, hidden amongst the trees at the moment. I love the fact that these gigantic tree men can hide in the forest, and it does technically make sense because they are themselves a tree. We have the Power Stone, another Scroll of Shielding, Foe Seeker, the Dwellers Below, as well as Earthblood. So a nice little toolkit there. But again, he's kind of a big distraction, and that distraction is needed because we have a lot of Knights. We have the Lost Silver Knights down on the right-hand side, Regiment of Renown, Great Stags, and 2 units waiting in reserve. I think the Great Stags at the moment are far better than Wild Riders, just simply due to the fact they've got more mass to push through the enemy. For the forces of the Dwarfs, we have a rather interesting build. We have miners with blasting charges dotted all the way along the front line, which I'm very scared of, because they will eviscerate the War Dancers as well as the Eternal Guard. More Dwarf Warriors backing them up as well, so relatively cheap and cheerful stuff on the flanks and in the centre, and then an insane amount of crossbow bolts shall be coming our way, in the form of Quarrelers as well as Bugman Rangers, dotted in this secondary battle line, protected by the Dragonback Slayers, the Regiment of Renown themselves. Leading the forces, we do have the old classic duo here. We have the... oh, actually, it's not Chad Forek. Oh my god, we have Rune Lord here. So we have the Rune Lord coming in with the Rune of Slowness, as well as the Rune of Negation, and he still has the Rune of Hearth and Home, the Forge Fire, the Master Rune of Grungy, all that good standard stuff. But he's going to be rolling dirty alongside a Master Engineer, coming in with that Flash Bomb, as well as the Fiery Ring, all the usual stuff you would expect. Without further ado, let's get this battle underway, and this match is an absolute scrap. It is such a good game. I was just going to cast one game, kind of taking a little look at the Bladesingers, but I played this game as well, and it is such a good fight all round. Both forces are currently on the march, moving towards each other, and I'm quite happily just biding my time with my Great Stags, hidden in the trees and starting to push up around behind their enemy. My poor little tree man is going to be taking quite a few bolts to the face at the moment, which is certainly a little bit of mismicro on my behalf, but at the same time, we have potential to heal, and it is absorbing all of that damage, allowing the rest of my build, hopefully, to start advancing, though we have taken a bit of a little bit of a slow start, and that is because we're micromanaging our Great Stags at the moment. You can see us thundering down the right-hand side and moving out from the trees, swooping upon those Bugman Rangers if we can get through, but there are Dwarf Warriors blocking our paths. Luckily, the Lost Silver Knights will be able to butcher the Dwarf Warriors. We've basically taken 0 damage in return, which is good news for me. You can see the Ancient Tree Man has had to use a Scroll of Shielding early on, but we do have more Great Stags flooding their way into that juicy centre of that Dwarf build. Unfortunately, we have been hit by Rune of Slowness and a Flash Bomb, which is basically making us canter very slowly. Look at this little trot we're doing to try to get to safety, but using both slows on one unit I think is a little bit of a misplay, because he could have slowed down 2 of the Knights instead. We do drop a lovely Dwellers Below, trying to catch the Bugman Rangers as well as the Dragonback Slayers, but my opponent is really swift to that and does move away, but unfortunately for him, into the path of more Great Stag Knights, who are looking to gobble up these Bugman Rangers and finish them for good. Looks like the Great Stags did manage to fall back with a decent number of models, and we can now push in with the Eternal Guard to deal with the Dragonback Slayers. So how are our Bladesingers doing? Well, they've done absolutely nothing so far, apart from get into position, but they're now going to be running into battle up against the miners. You can see that debuff is now being applied to them, and the lovely Branch Wraith does charge down in to assist this, and now that magic resistance is a meager 5%, meaning it's going to do basically nothing to stop the Bladesingers. Quarrelers are getting run over by the Lost Silver Knights, who are doing a relatively decent job now. I'm just harassing my opponent's backline where possible, and the battle has become an absolute flustercluck of madness. On the left-hand side, we do have War Dancers engaging with miners, luckily in the trees, which is perfect for us, of course, being Wood Elves, and the Great Stack Knights are doing a really good job just chewing their way through multiple units of Bugmans and Quarrelers, and this type of carnage is exactly where the Wood Elves thrive in general, but it is a very close game. In fact, balance power is slightly against me, as the Dragonback Slayers are engaging some of the Lost Silver Knights, dragging them down, as miners have replaced them in holding back the Eternal Guard. We do have more Great Stags return to the main fight though, looking to hop on and punish these miners, and as you can see, the Bladesingers have taken a solid amount of damage so far, but did manage to slaughter the miners, and are now pushing up to engage with the enemy a little bit more, where it hurts, right here alongside the Dragonback Slayers, who do currently have a Rune of Negation on them, which will certainly help them out quite a bit. The Lost Silver Knights get Earthblood and try to fall back, but look at this mass of the Dawi folk just not budging an inch as the Lost Silver Knights go slower than the Rune of Slowness as well as that Flash Bomb combined. In the back lines we do have some War Dancers who are... I have no idea how they've got that many kills. They've got 96 kills and only lost one model. I need to go back and check what these ladies were doing. Whatever it was a slaughterfest. Maybe chasing down routing units or something. But they're now trying to engage with the Bugmans, forcing my opponent once again to withdraw more and more troops away from the main engagement. But things are still looking a little bit bleak. War Dancers down on this left-hand side have managed to engage with some Quarrelers, but they're going to get bogged down by Dwarf Warriors as well. And luckily we do have more Bladesingers now chasing those Dragonback Slayers, looking to carve them to ribbons. The mighty Ancient Tree Man does have a second Scroll of Shielding popped on him now, and he's going to retreat backwards away from the Rune Lord, who is of course very resistant to magic, but at the same time Ancient Tree Man still hits very hard and would be able to take down a Rune Lord in single combat. The Tunnel Guard are currently engaged with the miners with the assistance of the Ancient Tree Man though. That shouldn't be too much of a problem, and the game has become very, very stretched, and the longer it goes on, the more we're trying to pull the dwarfs away from each other so we can use our superior speed and cavalry to really hunt down my opponent. Quarrelers are raining shots into the Bladesingers as well as a fiery rain coming in, and this is our big mistake. So the Bladesingers, they are very powerful and they're still doing really decent work, but they have unfortunately become distant from the Branch Wraith. You need to keep these two connected at the hip, joined constantly all game if you're going to get the best out of your Bladesingers, because now you can see 25% of their damage is just going to be completely negated by the Dragonback Slayers, and we are managing to cut them up nice and sliced and diced, which is good news for our Bladesingers, because of course the Dragonback Slayers need to be forced back to save all our Great Stag Knights. So it's not the worst trade in the world, but they could have done far better in this battle if they did just follow the one key rule, which is hang out with the Branch Wraith at all times. Tunnel Guard are being used to chase down Quarrelers at the moment. I don't want any ranged troops coming back. There is some miners with blasting charges here though, so it might be quite hard to chase down that Quarrelers for good. Tunnel Guard are dealing with miners as well. You may be wondering, by the way, why Eternal Guard. They actually have a little bit of a AP, I think, and also they're a little bit better than Dryades here. Dryades are quicker to push their way into the enemy back line, but that magic resistance really can be quite painful. Branch Wraith is dueling hand-to-hand with the Master Engineer. Will do a pretty solid job. Master Engineer is far more of a support character, very ranged-based, and that's not going to help him whatsoever up against this rather angry Tree Lady, so he's going to fall back as quickly as possible. Lost Silver Knights once again bouncing between combats, looking to finish up Dwarvish units on the periphery of the battlefield, break them with that ferocious charge and massive terror. Some Quarrelers have managed to find their feet once more, maybe steadied by a loyal Bugman being passed into their hands, but they're only focused on Eternal Guard at the moment, so I'm not too fussed. War Dancers doing a great job as well, cutting their way through the Dwarves, decapitating them, doing all that glorious stuff, and the War Dancers really do have some fantastic models. I do wish we got to see them a little bit more. Unfortunately, they get lit up there by a fiery ring. Many a War Dancer, unfortunately, shall be going to the grave today. The Ancient Tree Man is just hunting down Bugman Rangers. Don't really want these guys coming back, so you can see they're exploded in puffs of blood as the Ancient Tree Man tries to right many a wrong the Dwarves have done to Athel Lauren in the past. There's still a load of Dwarf Warriors coming back. The Rune Lord is very healthy. Balance power is against us, and we do not have that many troops left alive. We've got a few Haggard units here and there. We do have the Ancient Tree Man, however. Some War Dancers are returning, but our main punch right now is these 18 Lost Silver Knights, up to 141 kills. They performed really well so far. Very happy with how they've gone. We are trying to hunt down the Bugman Rangers with Eternal Guard, just apply a bit of pressure, and we're actually just going to ignore the Rune Lord for the most part, and really hunt down these range units. I want that Rune Lord to feel isolated and alone, away from all his friends, where then we can break him and slaughter him, and force him to take the Slayer Oath if he does survive. Mine Bladesingers are going to be running back into combat, up to 166 kills now. That's some pretty damn impressive stuff. War Dancers themselves up to 223. They are decimating the Bugmans here today. Ancient Tree Man, though, is still doing a relatively solid job. I don't think he's the worst Lord in the game in this matchup. Simply due to the fact, yeah, he does magic damage, but he's very tanky. Your opponents tend to get a little bit starry-eyed about him and try to target him down rather than anything else, and he simply heals himself up. Lost Silver Knights are driving their steeds hard right now. Really going to be beelining it for those Quarrelers as well as the Master Engineer. I don't need to worry about this main combat right now. They do get hit by a Flash Bomb, however, but we do get a cheeky Earthblood on top of them, which should keep them going at least a little bit. Well, it looks like a Rune of Slowness may also be coming down. That's the slowest charge in history, straight into that Master Engineer. But I'm actually trying to force them past him and get on top of the Quarrelers, because we can kind of surround the Engineer in the last stages of the game, but I'm trying to isolate his heroes where possible. In the distance, Quarrelers are being mopped up by the Dream Team of Bladesingers as well as War Dancers, and the Rune Lord is in the fight of his life right now, up against the Ancient Tree Man, who plants his staff straight through the anvil, cracking it, and then slapping the Dawi across the face. That is one hell of a grudge if I've ever heard one. Eternal Guard, of course, with their lovely little anti-large, actually been quite useful up against the Rune Lord. Of course, the Rune Lord, anyone on an Anvil of Doom, and Thorgrim do count as large troops, though they are dwarfs. It looks like the Rune Lord is most likely going to break. We can now hop down here and finish off the Master Engineer, now that we have dealt with the Quarrelers here. The Lost Silver Knights really, probably in this game, have been my MVPs, been able to bounce around the battlefield, but the War Dancers did so much work in this one. It was an absolute joy to behold, and my opponent's army does break and crumble before us. And that is game one. Remember, guys, there is a game two, so stick around for that, but we'll do a little bit of analysis first, go through the damage dealt, the values, all that good stuff. And in this little break, you know, I'm just saying, it's a good time to like and subscribe if you haven't already, just putting that out there. But well played to the Luick AJ Lover. Honestly, really lovely dude. We tried playing on quick bows, the game crashed, so we hopped into custom. And a little bit unfortunate that we were on extra large funds, so of course these kills and damage value is going to be a little bit inflated on what it would normally be, but still, you know, a really good fun game. Well played to him, and that was a very close, very scary game. And it said he did say it was a matchup he struggled with. I'm assuming that's more because this matchup is very Dwarf favoured, but at the top level, I'd argue it's Wood Elf favoured, because Glade Guard, Waywatcher spam, knowing which targets to pick apart, can be really hard for Dwarfs to deal with. I think I really need to work on some Dwarf tactics to try to counter out that heavy skirmish approach, but he did a really good job. We'll go for his build first. The Rune Lord, 545 damage value. He's a little bit more of a cheaper Thoric. I still think Thoric would be a better pick, but I do understand because you can come in as well with that extra missile resistance, and I really do think he was expecting me to go the mass range, so I do understand the Rune Lord pick, and he certainly wasn't too shabby. Master Engineers, always very powerful characters. 1,114 damage value is very impressive. The Fiery Ring really did decimate the Bladesingers quite nicely, and the Flash Bomb, again, an amazing item, very powerful indeed. The Minotaur Blast and Chargers performed a mixed bag, two of them failing, the other two performed really well. 450 and 875 damage value is pretty disgusting stuff on a unit as cheap as the Miners. Dwarf Warriors really struggled though across the board. Well, I say that, one of them did get 720, but for the most part the Dwarf Warriors were eventually just run over by cavalry and sliced and diced by the War Dancers. Dragonback Slayers got 1.7k damage value, 119 kills, putting on a really solid performance there. Quarrelers across the board did okay, 600, just shy of 500, 700, 400 damage value. Berkman's, likewise, just shy of 700 damage value, 400. So nothing really underperformed too much in this build, but nothing really shined either. But I think the fact almost everything, was close enough to paying for itself really did show how much of a close scrap this was. For us, the mighty Ancient Treeman got a 1.4 damage value, but more importantly, healed up the Lost Silver Knights, healed up the War Dancers, and dragged so much attention away from those War Dancers in the early stages of the game. All the Rangers focused on the Treeman rather than the true threats of the build. Branch Rave's got an impressive 868 damage value, supporting the Bladesingers early on, but unfortunately I let them kind of slip apart from each other, and we'll see how the Bladesingers performed after that. Eternal Guard, not the greatest damage value on these two units. The last one though, 1,280? They must have been the ones attacking the Rune Lord in the later stages of the game, getting some nice damage. You guys definitely deserve a promotion, you two, not so much. The War Dancers really did slice and dice their way to victory here. 259 and 279 kills. Remember, it is on extra large unit sizes. Not fun, sorry. So all the damage value should be legit. But yeah, the actual number of kills will be highly elevated, of course. But still, 1.3k damage value and 1.6 is certainly paying for themselves. Really were able to cleave their way through the Dwarf build nicely. The Bladesingers, though they did kind of get dragged away relatively early on from the Branch Wraith, still performed really freaking well. 173 kills, over 13k damage dealt, and 1,342 damage value. Still really nice, even when not used to their optimal efficiency. Now again, a lot of Dwarf players are going to try to target these ladies down, so they can be a little bit risky, but if they're not shooting them, or if they are shooting them, they're not shooting the Great Stags, and vice versa. So there's quite a lot of threats in this build all round, or this style of approach. Great Stags are a mixed bag, only 376 damage value and 933, kind of sacrificing themselves early on to enable us to get those good frontline engagements, whilst all the Quarrelers and Bugman Rangers in the back were distracted. The Lost Silver Knights, 1.4k damage value, 174 kills, and over 16k damage dealt, breaking the Dwarf hearts and coming in to seal victory. Hope you guys enjoyed that first game. We do have another one lined up, and yes, it is going to be Wood Elves versus Dwarves, as we continue to look at the Bladesingers and how well they can perform. Look at all these glorious replays. We have so many replays from today's stream, actually. This video's been done quite a bit in advance. From Thursday's stream, we had so many good games, which we might end up casting quite a bit. So up next, we have the untapped Bladesinger potential. So this is a little bit more how to use Bladesingers correctly, but at the same time, that does definitely not determine who wins or loses this fight, because even if one unit performs well, many others do not. And this time we're up against Domek 945 and his mighty Ungrim-led force. Now, our Bladesingers are gold chevroned. We had a load of extra money, but not enough to buy another unit. And this build is slightly different, but the same basis. We don't have the War Dancers, unfortunately, but we do have a few more tricks up our sleeve instead. So, once again, we're going to be coming in with the glorious Ancient Treeman. This time we have dropped Dwellers Below. In fact, this game was done before the other one, but we don't have Dwellers Below. That was a misclick last time. We came in with Regrowth, which is what we really want to help the Lost Silver Knights, and again, help the Ancient Treeman. We do have a little Waystalker down on the left-hand side with the arrows of Kurnos, and the main battle line of Eternal Guard dotted all the way along. On this side, though, on our right-hand flank, we once again have the Bladesingers, this time gold chevroned up, supported by the Branch Wraith, who comes in with the Wyvern, Scroll of Shielding, as well as a course this time, with the other Trickster Shard, which is something you need to bring all the time if you're going to be bringing her in this matchup, particularly if you are combining them with the Bladesingers. In the back lines, we do have, again, triple Great Stag Knights, one of which is the Regiment of Renown. Now, for my opponent, he has one cheeky Gyrocopter, just the one up in the sky, so nothing too fancy there, which I don't mind one pick. I mean, it is a little bit risky bringing Gyrocopters in this matchup, but one's not too expensive. If your opponent hasn't prepared for it, it can actually do some pretty decent work. In the front line, we have Dwarf Warriors backed up by double Iron Drakes, and they themselves are backed up by the more stalwart Longbeards. You don't run anywhere, lads, because we will be watching. We have some Hammerers in the back line and double Organ Gun, and in the centre we have Ungrim Iron Fist as well as the Runesmith. Ungrim is coming in, well, not completely naked. He has Death Blow and Deadly Onslaught. The Runesmith himself is coming in with the Iron Ward's Shield. If hit points are greater than 50%, it doesn't work. 10% damage resistance? Okay, that's not a particularly great item, I don't think. But combined with Rune of Negation, you can get 50% damage resistance, which is pretty cool. With the Rune of Oath and Steel and the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, I don't think this is as competitive force as one we just saw from the Dwarfs, though I think this player was a little bit newer, but still, bringing interesting stuff can often work as well. It really catches players off guard. Definitely looking to try to outtrade some of our range with the double organ guns. Gyrocopters are very lucky right now. This Waste Stalker really could not hit like a gigantic bark tree in the middle of Athalorn. He is garbage day. Arrows of Kernos just completely flumps and misses. I think one grazed a copter, but he's wasted a lot of ammunition already, and the Gyrocopters have taken diddly squat damage. Ancient Tree Man is going to be lumbering forward. It's the Great March of the Ents. Look how glorious this man is as he does push forward into battle. Eternal Guard as well looking to engage with the enemy. Now there's no blasting charges, which is really good news for my Bladesingers. In the back line, we've done a cheeky hit and run. My opponent does respond with the hammers, trying to push back the Great Stags, but alas, it is not enough, and double stags can really push through any unit and start shutting down the organ guns. One has been forced off. Luckily, the Lost Silver Knights are the ones taking the Holy Fire, because if this was the other unit, we would see quite a few dead stags right about now. Iron Drakes are trying to pour it in, supported by the hammers, but I'm willing to take a considerable amount of damage here as long as we're able to force off both organ guns. I do not need them shooting my Ancient Tree Man at the moment. We've done a bit of a delayed charge. I did see this massive opening in the back, and I wanted to capitalize as much as possible. And I decided to move up about this point to hopefully distract my enemy a little bit more as we start bouncing around and actually getting in to these Iron Drakes as well. We've already managed to shatter both of the organ guns. Hammers are doing a relatively solid job at dealing with this unit of Great Stag Knights. They've done damage across both of them, but so many stags constantly charging in. The hammers are taking quite a pounding at the moment. Iron Drakes themselves as well have been distracted, and that is going to buy time. The Bladesingers going to be coming in with a ferocious charge. We even pop the Wyvern down on the Longbeards, and they will not last many minutes, if not seconds, to be honest. I've never seen that animation on the Wyvern before. Loads of little skulls do indeed pop up. There you can see the floor is wetted by many a dead Dawi at the moment. And yeah, it's not even close. Bladesingers basically taking no damage, and the Longbeards already down to below half health and half models. Eternal Guard are just bumping and grinding up against the Dwarf Warriors. Ungrim is coming in for a pretty damn heroic charge onto the Ancient Tree Man, looking to bring that axe to bear and rip and tear that bark away with some nice chopping attacks. Waste Stalker is trying to focus him down, but this Waste Stalker is heavily drunk off Bugmans, it would seem, because he is missing almost every single shot to date. Great Stags have returned to the battlefield. We were pulling away the hammers and the runesmith a little bit. Gonna get some nice rear attacks into the Longbeards and float over to try and save this front line situation so we can push into the back line with some more units. You can see this time, unlike last time, we're keeping the Branch Wraith as well as the Bladesingers super close. They are hanging out constantly, and we are driving after these Iron Drakes. Some hammers are going to intercept us, likewise is the Runesmith, but the Bladesingers will quite happily take this fight. Hammers, it's nothing but a thing, particularly when we've got the Lost Silver Knights bounding in for support. They're trying to push through to shut down the Iron Drakes so they cannot turn and shoot. A lovely little Rune of Negation does go down on the hammers, but I think it's a little bit too little too late, and they are really getting slaughtered right now, and in fact, the little dwarfs are indeed terrified there. Not a good thing for a dwarf. That's kind of pretty dishonourable, I think, for a dwarf. Up in the skies, the Gyrocopters have absolute free reign. They're really bursting down the Eternal Guard at the moment. The Ancient Tree Man does run away from Ungrim. I simply do not want to fight him because he is very good against us. And instead, we're going to go after these Longbeards, supported by the Eternal Guard as well as the Great Stag Knights. We have the Lost Silver Knights getting hit by a regrowth here. That's going to top them up quite nicely because they've only actually lost one model despite losing over a third HP. And they're going to be cycle charging now along this front line to ensure the Eternal Guard actually beat the Dwarf Warriors. In the back lines, you can see the Bladesingers easily carve their way through these hammers, and that can turn their sights upon the Iron Drakes. They've been hunting them down all day, and they finally got their prize. You may have 125 armor, but that's going to mean absolutely nothing in the hands of the sisters, who are rather skilled at finding those nooks and crannies between the gaps and shoulder blades and shoulder plates and all that kind of good stuff in the dwarvish armor. Longbeards get clattered from behind by the Great Stag Knights, lowering those antlers, and they're going to be trying to hook some of those Longbeards onto them, who are both really struggling right now. Pinned between a rather spiky and a even spikier place, they're breaking and starting to lose hope. Ungrim is trying to force his way here onto the Ancient Tree Man, who again is consistently just purling him back into other units. Lovely little rune going down there, Rune of Wrath and Ruin, to try to shut down the Eternal Guard. Luckily the Bladesingers didn't take too much damage. We have Dwarf Warriors just being chased off by Eternal Guard at the moment, which is absolutely fine. Balance power is getting very close to army losses at the moment. There is some Dwarfs over on this right-hand side, a unit of 70 Longbeards, who don't seem to have been engaged in combat too much whatsoever. The Gyrocopter is continuing to fire down at the moment just onto Eternal Guard. Not the worst target. though the Bladesingers would be a better choice. Runesmith is currently standing. We pop an Earthblood though, going to buff up all our units, and look how healthy our stags are as they lower their antlers, charging headlong in to the Longbeards, clattering them, running them over, and treading them under hoof. Even more stags do bound uphill. They are honestly really beautiful models. Even if you don't like Wood Elves, I feel like you have to love the Great Stags. At least model-wise, they're very, very cool. Now, the Bladesingers, not only are they very good at clearing out all the infantry, melee troops, hunting down ranged troops, they're actually pretty damn amazing at hunting down enemy characters as well. They're, well, dwarf characters in particular, because basically all dwarf characters are foot characters. You do have a couple, like Thoric on his Anvil of Doom and so forth. But even then, they pack such a punch, they don't really care though. The magic resistance, of course, of Thoric would help them greatly. I really do think the Bladesingers should be considered by more people in this matchup when combined with the Branch Wraith. Of course, they are basically more expensive War Dancers, and you have to bring a Branch Wraith with you. But bringing a Branch Wraith is never really that bad of an idea. They're pretty good utility, and they come in with more Scrolls of Shielding. That one was a close victory, a less competitive game. Well played to my opponent nonetheless. I do think he was a bit of a newer player. But man, honestly, keep it up. I love to see new players in the game, and it was a damn epic Dwarf build. You did some really good work as well, targeting with Ungrim and keeping that Gyrocopter alive. It can be a little bit rough facing the Wood Elves, particularly when you're not expecting the rush build. So again, well played to my opponent. We also hope you enjoyed this battle and the previous one. I'll quickly go through all the damage dealt and damage value of all of these units in just a second. Before we get there, and we can gush over the Bladesingers once more, who at the end of this game, I should point out, were basically full health, and look at that damage dealt and damage value. Such good work. But before I do delve into that, if you guys did indeed enjoy this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe as well if you haven't already. Not only will you receive a blessing on your family for 5 generations from the great duck gods, it really does help out the channel quite a bit as well. Comment down below what you thought of the Bladesinger tactic. I really enjoy using it, and I've had some pretty good success just chewing my way through Dwarfs time and time again, and they tend to perform really well. They can, of course, be focused down and rather squishy, but I would like to hear people's thoughts of using the Branch Wraith with the item, the Trickster's Shard, to lower that magic resistance, and then using the Bladesingers just to run their way through all the Dwarfish infantry, because we did test this out. They do beat every single Dwarf unit in the game, I believe, when combined with the Branch Wraith. Maybe not the Peak Gate Guard, I don't know if we tested that out, but all the basic units, Longbeards, Dwarf Warriors, Hammerers, Ironbreakers, they clean them up without a problem whatsoever, but they are very expensive and very squishy, and that can cause some pretty big problems. Likewise, feel free to yell quack down below. What do you think of the Wood Elf and Dwarf matchup? It's a scary one. I don't really like playing it from the Dwarf perspective. And from the Wood Elves, I prefer the rush style of play, personally, although I think it is worse than just going full range kite and obliterating your opponent from long range. But anyway, once again, well played to Dominique, as well as my opponent in Game 1. Let's hop into the glorious damage. So, the Bladesingers, 141 kills. 12k, or over 12k damage dealt, 2,389 damage value is absolutely disgusting, considering they were basically unscathed by the end of the battle. If you can keep them away from the ranged troops of the Dwarfs, they will kill an infinite number of Dawi. It is a really deadly combo, but again, very risky because your opponent may indeed target them down. Great Stags were a mixed bag, 770 damage value here, but pretty full health towards the end. 1.2k on that unit, and 2.6 again on the Lost Silver Knights. I really do think they're a lovely unit to pick up against the Dwarfs. The Tunnel Guards across the board were simply here to hold the line, and they did that anvil job really well. They distracted the Dwarf Warriors long enough for us to sneak around the sides, and then we punished them in the late game with those Stags and the lovely rear charge. Wastalker was an absolute waste of space, unfortunately. 588 damage value. I don't like picking on my units and characters and so forth and lords, but this Wastalker, he's disappeared. I took him around the back of my house, and we won't be seeing this Wastalker anytime again, missing basically every single shot. Branch Wraith didn't do much damage value. Nice use of the Withering though, as well as healing up and using the Scroll of Shield and all that good stuff. Ancient Treeman was basically on the run the entire game. Only 246 damage value, not wanting to tussle with the mighty Ungrim Iron Fist. Speaking of which, 1.4k damage value, not shabby whatsoever, 22 kills. As for the Runesmith, he didn't do too much, unfortunately. The Dwarf Warriors held the line well, but unfortunately that was kind of a trap, because they thought they were being the Anvil, and that some Dwarfs were going to come in to be the Hammer, but alas, it was the other way around. Likewise, the Longbeards really did struggle. Getting run over by cavalry from all sides, and really just getting chewed through by the Bladesingers. Hammers did relatively solid though, 1,200 damage value, beating back some great Stag Knights early on, and they're the ones who did manage to dish out at least some damage to those Bladesingers in the mid stages of the game. I do like the Iron Drake pick, they're really cool and thematic. Unfortunately, they were just shut down the formation, so Dominic, if you are watching this back from the future, I suppose, yeah, back from the future, I would suggest doing like an onion style approach rather than leaving the 2 all guns back with a hammer protected and push forward with everything. You should probably have layers, so which you were kind of doing, you were getting there, but just 1 or 2 more layers to help protect the troops, particularly on those flanks. The Gyrocopter managed to get 358 damage value, unfortunately just shooting down the wrong targets of the Eternal God rather than the Bladesingers. But I love the attempt, man. Honestly, I really hope you do enjoy playing Total War Warhammer, and there's a link down below to my Discord, which you can get involved in, meet a load of new players, a load of experienced players, join in tournaments and events, and that goes for absolutely everyone. Links down below in the description. If you'd like to support the channel and join my Patreon, there's a link to do that. Likewise, you can join my Discord and chill out with a really cool group of people. So that's it for today's video. If you've stuck it all the way out to the end here for all of my analysis, just a quick reminder, you yourself, yes you're awesome. But anyway guys, until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome. Quack.